My name is Wil Clegg. I'm the worst host of all time. So how many people have ever been to an Awkward Teenage Year show before? Just by a round of applause. Oh, all right, so a lot of people have not been to one before. Great, so here's what you're in for. This is the show where we gather in a basement and we relive our teenage traumas for your entertainment. And what that looks like is we have 5 really wonderful storytellers here tonight who are going to regale you with tales of things like failing the big test or winning the big game, backstabbing best friends or first-time lovers or experimenting with various intoxicants. It's all about coming of age. That's why we keep coming back and doing this show month after month. So I've got, up here in the front row, 5 excellent storytellers for you here tonight. But while we wait for any latecomers to arrive, I'm going to tell you a little story about a band that I used to play in. I have alluded to it several times on this show before, that I played the drums when I was a teenager. It's something that I mostly did to upset my parents. But I did also actually kind of care about the music. And it all started when my best friend Nick got an electric guitar on his 12th birthday. And he started to be able to play the songs that we listened to all the time. So this is the early 90s, so we were actually listening to our parents' music, Led Zeppelin and The Doors, The Grateful Dead. And I was insanely jealous when he started to be able to show off and play these songs. So I was like, well, I should play an instrument too. But Nick's already playing the guitar, so I'm going to play the drums. And this is perfect to upset my parents because the drums are so loud, right? Like an electric guitar, you can plug in headphones and just practice by yourself. The drums, no, everyone's got to listen to that. And I was not good, not ever actually, not even just at first. But it took me a long time to even get the basics of it down. But eventually, once I did, Nick and I formed our first band, and it was called Thermal Viscosity. Which is just a term that we learned in science class. It didn't have anything to do with anything, except for we thought it sounded pretty cool. So Thermal Viscosity was a cover band. We played exclusively Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Soundgarden. I mean, it was the middle 90s by this point. This is the perfect time for grunge, for angry teenagers to be playing music in their garage. And the only thing is, we didn't really have a lot of space to play, real shows, If somebody was having a party in their backyard, maybe they would invite us to come play, if they were really good friends, because, again, we're not good, Playing music over a stereo sounds much nicer. But eventually we come up with this plan that we'll have our own party where we're the featured band and we can play the whole night, right? My parents agree to this for reasons I'll never understand. They're watching at home right now. We'll talk about it later. I don't know. Nick and I, we built a stage out of plywood and 2x4s. It's only 4 inches off the ground because that's the height of a 2x4. So it's barely a stage, right? And it's all uneven and wobbly because we're 13, 14 years old trying to build a stage. I still have a scar on my foot actually from dropping a piece of plywood and trying to jump away from it. It just scraped right down and cut off a big chunk of my leg. So I'll never forget that stage. And we had a party, in my backyard. We had to go around and warn the neighbors that we're going to have live music. And so they probably thought it sounded nice, but they didn't expect, what was really going to sound like screeching cats the entire night. So as we got a little bit older, Nick and I stayed together in the band. The other members kind of, went off to do other things, but we were still serious about music. And eventually, in high school, I was in a musical, Oklahoma. I've talked about that on the stage before too. And I didn't get the lead role, but the guy who did was actually a very good singer. And so I recruited him to join the band. And all of a sudden, we sounded a lot better. And so then we got a little more serious about it. We renamed the band Mr. Burns. So this is the crew. This is the summer of 1996, and I know that because my hair is dyed black, which that's another story that I don't want to tell anyone. So this is our official band photo. If we had actually gone on a tour, this is what we would have submitted to the press, with the ice cream man. That's Nick with the really long hair in the middle there, and then Whit is the guy next to me, who's in the middle of his ice cream sandwich. He was our lead singer. And we actually started writing our own songs. And we made a cassette tape that we distributed at our high school. And I don't probably have to tell you that these songs were not good. But when we started to like give it out to people, they felt like they needed to review the music like to us, you know, and so we were unfavorably compared to Hootie and the Blowfish, if you remember that wonderful band. Some people said we sounded like the Doobie Brothers, but bad. So we didn't get invited to play a lot of parties, but we did play a couple of Battle of the Bands, and we managed to win one of those. Very low bar of competition in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so the winning prize was we got to play a show at the Merge Fest, which was in uptown Charlotte, right in the shadow of the skyline, this big park called Marshall Park. And it was kind of a big deal. Like we got invited to the stage by one of the local radio DJs. And Lauren, if you would roll video. Yeah, I brought some actual video to show you of this big gig that we played. I selected the first clip because it features me, not because it sounds good. We got it? There it is. Cover song. I had to mix it up. We only had 4 original songs, right? So we had to play a little Eric Clapton in there too. And listen closely to any of our songs. You can hear me just constantly speeding up rather than keeping a constant time, which is probably my biggest weakness as a drummer. But that's okay because it was generally so loud you couldn't really tell. So I picked this clip because I wanted you to see that there were tens of people there to see us. But no, this is probably the biggest show we played. There were maybe 100 people there at some point, including my parents. This is my dad here, wondering why he's been summoned on a Saturday afternoon to watch this. My mom's back there. It's mostly just our parents, a few friends, cousins, anyone we could recruit to come. So this was like our best original song that we thought was going to catapult us up the charts someday. I would play the whole thing for you, but it's 7.5 minutes long, which is like longer than Stairway to Heaven, so I'm not going to subject you to that. Yeah, this was like a pretty awesome gig for us to play at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday in front of all these people in Charlotte, North Carolina. And yeah, that's probably enough of that. It doesn't get any better. So what happened next is, we're buoyed by our success. And we decided to go out like hunting for actual gigs in music clubs in Charlotte, and no one will have us except for this little club called the Milestone. And the Milestone is famous in Charlotte because Nirvana played there very early in their career, right? Literally nobody else you've ever heard of played there, but that was enough to keep them going for like 7-8 years afterwards. And we managed to get like a short 20-minute set among 5 other bands one night. And now the Milestone is in West Charlotte, kind of like a seedy area, not even like a residential area, just like an industrial area. Not somewhere you really want to hang out after dark. And so, naturally we invite like our parents to come, a bunch of other teenagers who've never been to this side of Charlotte before. And as soon as we get there, like it's got graffiti like all over the walls everywhere. It's a very small space. Think like this with much lower ceilings and just like wider, right? And instead of black walls, you just got like this kind of pukey green color and graffiti everywhere. Not good graffiti, just like people writing stuff, sticking their stickers up on the wall, bands that have long since broken up. And the other bands are all much older than us. It's all like actual adults. So their friends are there too, and they're like pretty seedy. You could smoke cigarettes inside in the 90s, right? So everybody's smoking cigarettes. We're all coughing, and it just felt like very uncomfortable. Like we didn't belong there. I could see my parents just like the hair sticking up on the back of their neck. I feel bad for inviting everybody to do this show. And we play our same 20-minute set that we played at Merge Fest. They've already heard it, so there's nothing really special about the show. And when we're done with it, I'm just like, I don't want to do that again. Like, I'm not even sure I want to be in this band anymore if this is what we're going to be doing. And it became like a big fight with the other members of the band. They all wanted to continue to play at the milestone. We've been invited back because we brought so many people. Little did they know, none of them would ever return. But and so it became a thing. And eventually, I called up Nick and I told him, I think I had to quit the band. And Nick had been my best friend at this point for like 11 years. We've been inseparable. We're sleeping in each other's houses every weekend, playing in the bands together for all this time. And so I'm expecting him to reply with like, hey, it's okay. Like, I get it. Musical differences. We'll go our separate ways. But what he says instead is, good. We met without you, and we said if you didn't quit, we're going to kick you out. Yeah. So they had another drummer already lined up. It was actually Whit's little brother, Zach, who had just gotten a drum kit and started to learn. Apparently that was going to be better than me. And wouldn't you know it, 2 months later, the band completely fell apart. But what really was awful about that is that was the last time that I really hung out with Nick again. Yeah, we didn't even get together until 15 years later, just to catch up and laugh about old times. And that's, that always was a little bit sad for me. But I did keep this photo hanging up in my room at my parents' house for 25 years after Mr. Burns broke up. Until they moved, until they downsized, this was always hanging in my old bedroom. And I just got this scan of it. I actually have the original print now. I'm getting ready to hang it up at my house back home, which my wife is watching. Surprise! New artwork on the wall. So that is the story of the rise and fall of Mr. Burns, everybody. Oh my God, I forgot to tell you why we were called Mr. Burns. I'm dying to know, right? Obviously, there was a character on The Simpsons called Mr. Burns, right? So that was part of it. But very clever, very sophisticated. We all had sideburns. So that's why we were also called Mr. Burns. Yeah, I know. Works better in the middle of the story than it did at the end. All right, so look, that's enough from me, guys. Are you ready for your first storyteller of the night? Yeah. All right, our first storyteller hails from St. Louis, Missouri. She is a stand-up comedian, storyteller, a writer. She has appeared on MTV. I really want to hear more about that. Please welcome to the stage Lauren Davis.
Hi, give it up for your host. Awesome story. Hey, you guys. I can't fully see you guys. So growing up, when I was a teenager, I had beef with God. Okay. You see, I was born with this thing, with this condition, where my right eye didn't fully develop. So back then, and even now, I like to think when God made me, he took an edible, It's fun, right? An edible is fun, but when you take an edible, you also forget some things, So I don't have any vision in my right eye, and it's a lot smaller than my left. And, I don't blame him for forgetting some things, but I do wish he would have remembered my titties, yeah. Sorry, kids. I remember there's some kids back there. I was like, yeah. And so as a teenager, my mother was always hyper vigilant, right? She would make me wear goggles to play basketball to protect the good eye. And she even put me in private school, as if rich white kids don't bully. And to be fair, Brad and Chad didn't bother me, I bullied them. No, I just playing. No, but so I didn't really have beef with God because of my eye or my lack of boobs. It was because in addition to all of these things, I also had asthma. It's one thing to be the quirky-eyed black girl, but it's a whole other thing to be the quirky-eyed black girl who be wheezing from time to time. I just thought an inhaler was so lame, Like I would be in class hiding it like it was cocaine, taking secret bumps like when I could. I was like, damn, I'm embarrassed to breathe. Just thought it was lame to like fall out with the air, you know? But so I just felt like at 13, 14, as I was getting very obsessed with my looks, I was the first teenager to ever do this, I was feeling like I was just too much. I was feeling like I just had too many things going on, too many ailments, and I felt like God just kept stacking struggles, you know? I felt like he was making me draw 4 on struggles, and I was like, this isn't Uno, my guy. This is my life, okay? Side note, do we stack in Uno, right? We stack in Uno, right? We stack in Uno, because that's fun, because it's a game, not in your life, right? Yeah. And also, okay, side note, not for nothing, even today, I feel like I'm probably a lesbian, right? Give it up, LGBT. But I'm afraid to add another thing to the list. Black, blind, can't breathe, can't fight, and gay? It's a lot of communities to be a part of. I didn't even tell you guys what my toes look like. He forgot something there too. I have 9.5. It's just like this really tiny one. Anyways, what was I talking about? So during this time, as I became a teenager, I masked, right? Like, I hid behind my talents. I was a great artist. I hid behind my clothing. I was really into fashion. And I hid behind an emo bang, okay? Remember the emo bang, okay? So I hid my eye behind all of these things, and then ultimately in my late teens, I got a custom contact lens. So you can kind of see it in that photo. It gave my eye some semblance of symmetry with my left eye, and it allowed me to have a lot more confidence, and I felt like people were finally looking at me rather than it. But this contact lens, you know, also started to become like this crutch, right? So it was a way for me to also sort of divorce the flawed and messy parts of myself from myself. And you know, I just wanted to be normal, okay? Like, I didn't want people to ask me, how do you see the world? You know, I didn't want people to keep asking me like, oh, what's it like being partially blind? And the answer was always the same, you know? I was like, it's hard to describe, but I'm pretty sure I don't care about half the things you guys care about. Because I can only see, yeah, about half the things y'all can see, yeah. You know, to this day, I do think it would be really nice to not have to tilt my head to see a landscape. That would be cool. My whole life on portrait mode, for real. Anyways, so during my teenage years, wore this contact lens, gave me this new confidence, and then, I know you guys don't like when people talk about when they become in their 20s, but I'm about to talk about it a little bit. And then as I got in my 20s, I was still wearing this contact lens, and I began stand-up comedy at the tender age of 29. And I was mining my life and my experiences for commentary and for humor, but then I realized when it came to my eye, there wasn't shit funny. I couldn't find anything funny about it, and I realized that's why it's still so tender. I realized I was actually still 13 going on 30, you know? And so I felt like that energy had to be transformed. I needed to make jokes about it. I needed to, but I needed to also become more unmasked. And so I stopped wearing it, and the craziest thing happened. The world didn't shrink, it expanded. I became much more confident, much more comfortable in my skin, much more magnetic. And there's this saying. Do you guys know this saying that the kids on the internet say? They say, face card don't decline. You guys have heard of this? No. Face card don't decline is like this saying for kids say it's like saying you have like a beautiful face, right? Your face card don't decline, like it's accepted everywhere, whatever. So I would hear that and I would get stressed out because I'm like, okay, if I don't have this contact anymore, what kind of card do I have, you know? Like, is it gonna be maxed out? Like, what is my face card? But what I've realized is it's an Amex, okay? It's not accepted everywhere, but it's great. It's gold. Thanks. No, but I've just become much more comfortable. And then I think that, like, what I've learned through it all is that, you know, I am becoming the person that my teenage version of myself always wanted to see and always wanted to be. Thank you.
Wow, great story. Brad and Chad did bully me in middle school. Just wanted to say. No, really great Uno reference as well. Yeah, that's such a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. I think a lot about like hiding behind like the way you looked in middle school. I did a similar thing, just in like growing my hair long and trying to act like I was one of the bad kids because I was getting bullied, you know, and really I was just a little nerdy kid on the inside. So I think we all, well, at least you and me, did that to some respect, right? So thank you for sharing that. One more time for Lauren, everybody. All right, we're going to keep the show moving along, move on to our next storyteller here. Really excited to have him on the show for the first time. It's Lauren's first time on the show, too, I forgot to mention. Our next storyteller, he is a two-time winner at The Moth. He's been on the Risk show, and he also had an off-Broadway show called Love Notes. Please welcome Mitch Applebaum.
Boy, you really can't see anybody here. So, in the summer of 1969, I turned 13. And some famous things happened in that summer. The New York Mets started playing well in the summer, and they went on to be the amazing Mets and won the World Series. Yeah, okay. Number two is Woodstock, probably the most famous concert ever, took place. Number three, Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. Who could forget his famous saying, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind"? The answer is I forgot it. I had to look it up just to get it right, but I did forget. I wanted to get the words right. And maybe the most important thing that happened that summer, which I'm sure you'll all agree, I had my first crush. Every summer, my family and I used to go up to the Catskill Mountains to bungalow colonies, and we spent the whole summer there. Mostly Jewish families went up there because in the 50s and 60s, Jews were not welcome everywhere. And this was a place where they could all vacation and be together, and it was safe. And that's why the Catskills became the Borscht Belt. So in the summer of '69, we spent it at a bungalow colony called Esther Manor. And there was a 13-year-old girl who was also there for the summer. Her name was Amy. Now, before I talk about Amy, let me just say this. 13 years old, knew nothing about sex. And when I say nothing, I mean N-O-T-H-I-N-G, nothing. I had never had sex ed, never discussed sex with my parents or my friends, and I didn't even know that Playboy existed. So I was not ready for this. But what I did know is that I really liked being around Amy. My heart skipped a beat when she smiled, and her hair smelled good. So I had these feelings for her. Didn't quite know what to do with them because, like I say, I knew nothing about girls. I was actually transitioning from the Girls Haters Club to the Woman Likes Club. I mean, I was making that transition. Amy was about an inch taller than me. She had shoulder-length black hair, bangs, and dimples. And to this day, I'm still partial to all those things. I still like those things. Esther Manor, like most bungalow colonies, had a camp. And they were putting on a production of Oklahoma, which just came up before, as it exists. So, I got cast a minor role. Amy got cast as the lead, Laurie. And I was a little not so happy about that. But 3 days before the show was to go on, the male lead, who was playing Curly, dropped out of the show. And guess who got the lead? So the big advantage of this was I got to hold her hand. Which good and bad, because now the physical feelings were kicking in. I didn't know what to do about the emotional ones, and then I had to deal with the physical ones. So I was a wreck. And you know, I was embarrassed to tell anybody, so I couldn't talk to anybody about it. I think Amy felt the same way. I think she had some feelings, but she wasn't talking to anybody about it. And we just went on. One day, Amy and I are walking in the woods, and I think we got along pretty well. We were friends. We're walking in the woods, and I don't remember what I was saying, but I had her laughing really, really hard and really, really long. And when she finally stopped laughing, she said the most romantic thing a girl can say to a guy. She said, "I just peed in my pants." I said, "No, you didn't." She said, "Yes, I did." And then she said something that we went back and forth a couple of times, and she finally said something that really surprised me. She said, "Feel it." So, obviously I did. What are you going to do? I felt it from the outside, and I'm here to report it was wet. Now, like I say, I knew nothing about sex. But I was pretty certain that we just had sex. So I was kind of excited about this. Not even knowing what I was excited about, but I was excited about it. And when we parted, I told the first person I ran across, which was my friend Gary. Unfortunately, the word got back to Amy, and there went my summer crush. She was pissed. And we were towards the end of the summer anyway, but I was feeling really bad. It didn't feel good, and like I said, I was feeling bad. And I think I learned 2 lessons from this story. Lesson number 1, if you have a youngster, anybody in the audience may have a young kid, talk to them about sex. It just makes sense. It's going to come up, and do them a favor, and just tell them what you think or what you know. Let them ask questions, and they'll be better off for it. Lesson number 2, if a girl ever tells you she peed in her pants and tells you to go feel it, don't tell anybody.
Great story, Mitch. You know, I learned what sex was in the 2nd grade. There was a kid named Kevin who had been held back, right? So he was a year older than everybody, so he like knew everything there was to know. And I remember him talking about sex one day in class in front of me, and I'm like, what is sex? You know, and he's like, oh, sex is when 2 people are in love and they take their shirts off and hug. And that's what I thought sex was until the 7th grade. And in the 7th grade, my friend LaToya told me what sex really was. Very shocking to find out. And then she wrote in my yearbook, "Dear Wil, I hope you lose your virginity this summer." Which my mom then read, and that's how my mom learned that I knew what sex was, because we never had any kind of talk, you know, and that yearbook disappeared from the face of the earth, I think. Yeah, gone forever. I know you said, you know, talk to your kids about sex. I have a 1-year-old daughter. She is too young now, but I just think about that, like she's going to be a teenager someday, and then my wife yesterday even said, like, you know, you're the one who's going to have the talk with her, right? I'm like, no, no, I can't. I don't know how to have the talk with anyone, definitely not her. So I'm going to have you talk with my wife about talking to my daughter about it. Okay, all right, good. All right, one more time for Mitch, everybody. Great story. All right, let's get your next storyteller up here. Really excited to have her back on the show, our only repeat guest tonight. She is a comedian and a storyteller. You've probably seen her doing shows all around New York City here. Please welcome to the stage, Bridget McGuire.
Thank you guys so much. Keep it going for your host of the show. Yes. So when I was a sophomore in college, but still 19, I had more anxiety than normal. And so I was like, you know what, I think I'm gonna make an appointment to see a therapist. And really, I think I just wanted drugs. I think I just wanted her to give me a pill. And so I went in there to this woman's office and I told her everything. And I was like, so I have anxiety, right? And she's like, you do, but I'm also diagnosing you with something. You have obsessive compulsive disorder, more commonly known as OCD. And I was like, oh my God, I have something? I was like, can I get attention for this? Or like, I don't know, a pass for like the teacher, can I get out of class? Like, do I need to go home? Like what? And I was like, oh my God, like Monica and Friends had OCD and she was so pretty. Like this is just... And then I started thinking about it though, and I was like, wait, no, I am like not a neat freak. Like I'm messy. I'm not like a big germaphobe. Like I don't like showering. Like I sit on toilet seats, like porta potties included. And like I just was like, I don't think I have this. And she's like, no, you have a different type. It's called intrusive thoughts. And I was like, oh, so I'm a fucking creep. I was like, this is not the mental illness I had envisioned for myself as an adult. And I wanted to like read this, make sure I got it right. So those who don't know what OCD is, this is like, I don't know, textbook definition, but it says OCD is characterized by repetitive, unwanted, intrusive thoughts, obsessions, and also irrational, excessive urges to do certain actions, compulsions. So she gave me this like workbook that was called the OCD workbook. She gave me a hug. I was like, HIPAA. And she's like, I'll see you back here next week. I want you to like read whatever you want and like do chapters 1 and 2. So I kind of like walked to my car and was like, I don't know that I have this. Like this sounds, and then some thoughts came back to my childhood around this beautiful time in my life behind me. And so when I was in 5th grade, I did not go, if you can't tell about everything from me, I'm from the Midwest and I'm Catholic, but Mitch and I went to the same school because Catholic schools don't have sex ed either. So I don't know. We had something called family life, which is pretty fucking deceiving when you're 11, because we were taken on a field trip for family life, and we were brought into a room like this, and we were shown a live birth on a big screen with no warning, no heads up, and I thought we were going there to talk about our family's lives and traditions. Like I was gonna be like, oh my God, we make like Swedish meatballs every Christmas Eve. Like I didn't know I was gonna see like a placenta. So I walked out of there so nervous. Like I thought I got my period in 5th grade. Turns out I was just wearing a pair of my mom's old underwear. Yes, and it's weird to wear a thong when you're 11. I'm just kidding, they're like bloomers. But like, anyways, so a few, afterwards, I showed my mom. I'm like, I think I got my period. And she's like, oh my God, that's it. Everyone's got to start doing their own laundry around here. And like, I just was like so freaked out. Like I didn't understand. Like I saw this stuff, but didn't register. So a few weeks later, we went to Disney World for spring break. And this is the 90s, and we were on a monorail going to Epcot. And there was this 90s dad in his short khaki legs, like trying to get past me with this big double stroller, and our legs brushed. That's it. And then we went about our day, and then that night I went to bed, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I felt really sick. And, could it have been the Mickey Mouse pancakes I had? Could it have been the Italian, Mexican, and Chinese food I had in Epcot? Or the cotton candy, or the 19 Diet Cokes, like what could it have been? But I opened my eyes feeling so sick, and I looked over and it said 3:02. And I was like, oh my God, I'm sick in the morning. It's morning sickness. So I woke up my mom in the middle of the night and was like, I'm pregnant! She's like, what? She's looking at someone like this. Like, what? Like, I did not have my period. She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that man's leg, like the monorail, I think somehow like semen got in me and maybe that was my period. And she was like, oh my God, no. She's like, in order to get pregnant, a man and woman need to be naked, completely naked and laying down, which really could have backfired. Like she's lucky that I was so prude and fearful of life because, could you imagine me being like 19 and my friend calling me and being like, hey, I think I'm pregnant. I'm like, well, where'd you do it? She's like, oh, my bed. I'm like, yeah, you better go get a pill or something. She's like, no, in the shower. I'm like, you're safe. Okay, so that was one. And then I thought about the time when I was in 8th grade and I had gotten this big phone for my room, which was a big deal in the 90s. And it had these humongous buttons. And I talked on the phone like more than anyone I know. Like my phone was glued to my ear. Like everyone was always screaming at me to get off the phone. And every day I would talk to my friend Annie. And one day I woke up, and in the morning I went downstairs and my mom was on the phone and she hung up and she's like, Bridget, that was Annie's dad. Did you call their house in the middle of the night? And I'm like, no. And she's like, oh, well, they said on the caller ID, it said that we had called at like 2 a.m. And I was like, I didn't call her. And really, like in theory, what probably had happened is that she was the last person I had called and like I must have kicked the phone off my bed and hit redial. But I was like, I'm fucking calling people in my sleep. So then I'm like, am I calling my teachers? Am I calling the police department? Am I calling the boys I have crushes on? Who am I calling? So from that day on, in like 7th grade until I went away to college, every night before I went to bed, I would dial my birthday into the phone. 4882. And in the morning, I would pick up and hit redial. And if I heard 4 buttons, I was like, whew. But if I heard more than 4 buttons, which I never did again, I was like, well, I'm calling people in my sleep. So I was like, okay, well, maybe that's like a compulsion. And then, most people I know are not dialing numbers, into their phones. But I was. So then I was like, but I don't know. I'm like, I was thinking back to those times. And I was like, but I was like a kid, But I then thought about the summer before, when I was, 18, and I had a pair of sandals that were called Rocket Dogs. And in the late 90s, early 2000, I hope they don't come back, but Rocket Dogs were these humongous clogs, but they also had like flip-flops that were this tall. They were like humongous platform flip-flops. Yes, they're hideous. And like, I don't know how I did not break an ankle. And now I sound like I'm 87 years old. Like, how did I not break an ankle? But like, I don't know how, because they were so big. And my roommate, freshman year, my people, they smelled so bad. People would hide them. Like my roommate was like, I hate these fucking Rocket Dogs. And I would like be like, has anyone seen my Rocket Dogs? And they'd be like on a different wing. Like they'd be like, people were hiding these dogs because my dogs were in them and they were so gross. Like I, would go to Cubs games in these Rocket Dogs, bars, porta potties, grossest things. So one day I was asked to babysit at this very nice family's house. And as I walked in, the mom was like, oh, we just got our floors redone. Would you mind taking off your shoes? And I looked down and I was like, oh, these are the Rocket Dogs. And my feet were like black. Like I probably didn't shower. Again, that's not the type of OCD I have. And I was like kind of embarrassed because like there were like holes in the Rocket Dogs. They were like falling apart and these people were very rich. And so I felt like, I don't know if I can, like, I'm like, okay, fine. I take them off. The parents leave and they just have one 1-year-old boy. And I have to make him mac and cheese, so I'm making his food. And he's right by me, and I turn around, and then I look, and he's gone. And I'm like, oh my God, where'd he go? And I like look over, and he's by the front door, and he's got a Rocket Dog in his mouth. And I was like, oh no. So I was like, Jesus. So I like grab it out of his mouth, and I'm like, okay, like, let's whatever. Yeah. And so I feed him his mac and cheese, I give him a bottle, I put him to bed. And then I'm sitting there, and I'm like, what was on that Rocket Dog? Like I had been to a Cubs game the day before. I'm like, there could be alcohol, there could be nicotine, there could be drugs, there could be poison, there could be anthrax, there could be, I have no idea, like anything could be on that Rocket Dog. And now this baby just ingested it. So I spent like a good hour like going, checking on the baby to make sure he's breathing, then going back on the couch, and then I'd go back again and make sure he's breathing, then I'd go back on the couch, and then I'd go back into the couch, and I was just sitting there, and I called my mom, because she's the one that set me up with this babysitting job. And she's like, no, come on, kids are resilient. They put so much junk in their mouth. Like, they're fine. And I'm like, I don't know, Mom. I'm like, what if something? And she's like, you're just, crazy. And so I was like, okay. So I was just sitting there, and I'm like, I don't know. I couldn't, like, watch TV. I couldn't do anything. I just kept thinking about what was on that shoe. So I was like, oh, my God, I know. So I grabbed the shoe, both shoes, because I didn't know which shoe it was. And then I licked the Rocket Dog. Because I was like, well, if he dies, I die. And then if I wake up tomorrow and I'm alive, like, he's alive. So I lick the shoes, and then, I feel great. because I had relieved. Like I had the thought, and then I did the impulsion, and it makes you feel better for a little bit of time. And I went home, I got my money. They paid me a lot of money because they're rich. And then I like woke up the next morning, and I was like, holy shit, what if those people have cameras? What would they see? This like psychopath like dancing between the kids' room, so weird, then going up and licking her shoes. So then I had to call them and be like, I'm so sorry, I don't know how to tell you this. They were like, we don't have cameras, like, and we also, but then, to be honest, you guys, they hired me back. They were like, this woman is so crazy. Nothing will happen to my children on her watch. So I was like, great, I'll be there tomorrow at 11. And I was like, I will shower this time, but I will not bring those shoes. But so I was in a sorority house sophomore year, and I got into that bed, and then I read that book cover to cover, that workbook, and I was very relieved and also frightened because the stories I just told you were so similar to the stories and examples I was reading in that book, and I was kind of like, oh shit, I've got OCD. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Wow. So a few years ago, I got diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, and my therapist gave me a workbook, a big book, the Anxiety and Phobia workbook. And I did not read it cover to cover immediately. I was like, what the fuck is this? I have homework for therapy? Like, but then I eventually did get into it and had a very similar experience to you, and it did me a lot of good. But yeah, it's not what I expected going into that at all. Was to go home with a big textbook. But I did not see it coming, licking the rocket dog. Big plot twist. But honest question: is that really OCD or just an incredible act of solidarity? I mean. Yeah, that's probably why they hired you back. They're like, we can trust this lady. Anything happens to our kids, she's going to do it too. It's an amazing story. Thank you, Bridget. One more time for Bridget, everybody. So we do have one more story for you, but before we get to him, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping here. Perhaps you are seated out there in the audience and you're listening to these stories and you're thinking like, oh, I actually have a funny and or weird story from when I was a teenager, because we all do. And maybe you're thinking, I would like to share it with a bunch of strangers in a basement. Well, you can email us your pitch for your story at awkwardteenageyears@gmail.com. That's how we've got, I think, everybody who's on the lineup tonight, emailed us a pitch. We'd love to hear your story. We'd love to get you on a show sometime if you're so inclined. Even if you've never told a story on stage before, we're happy to work with you. We can do some coaching if you want, or we can not do any coaching at all if you don't want. However you like to do it, please reach out. And if you'd like to follow us on the social media, we are the most active on Instagram. That's the best place to find us, at Awkward Teenage Years. We are also on the Facebook. We don't really do as much there because we're not, very old people. We're no longer on Twitter or X or whatever because that's mostly Nazi stuff now, I gather. We're not into that, so we do have a Threads. I didn't put it on here because, it's an old graphic. I didn't want to update it, but is anybody like Threads is there, but we're not doing anything there, right? We're just sort of okay, it's nice, it's not Twitter. The last thing I want to say is that we have all of our previous shows, all 4.5 years of them, from the original show we did here under St. Mark's in the Frigid Fringe Festival, all of the live streams we did during the pandemic, so many live streams when there was nothing else to do, and then all of the shows that we've done once we were able to come back and do live shows again. They're all on our YouTube channel. You can find that by searching up at Awkward Teenage Years. So please come find us on the internet. Having said all that, I would love to bring up our final storyteller of the night. We're really excited to have him here. He is just back from being at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, where he was doing his solo show, Coming Out to Dead People. Please welcome Ricky Sim.
Give it up for Wil again, guys. So a little bit about myself. I'm originally from a very traditional family in Malaysia, And my mom and I immigrated when I was a teenager from Malaysia to Flushing, Queens. Anyone here been to Flushing, Queens? Yeah, Flushing, Queens, yeah. Like if you've never been, Flushing, Queens is like, it's very diverse. It's like predominantly lived by working class immigrants. Like growing up, I mainly, friends with like Asian, Black, and Latinos. The only white friends I knew growing up were Ross, Rachel, Joey, Chandler, Phoebe, and Monica. Yeah, that's kind of how diverse Flushing, Queens is, right? So when I was 19 again, when I was 19, I went to college in the Bronx, and every weekend I'll come home to visit my mom in Flushing, and my mom would love to like pack like foods and fruits for me to bring to school. And she loved to pack this kind of fruits. It's a Fuji apple. She doesn't remember how to call them, so she usually just called them by the price lookup code of the apples. The little stickers on the apples, right? So she usually would just be like, oh, our fridge is running low on that 4131 apples again. Yeah, it's really sweet, right? But she'll do that every weekend, and that was in 2006. Guys, remember 2006? When Lady Gaga was still called Stephanie, right? Mariah Carey's song We Belong Together can be heard repeatedly on my 30 gig iPod video, right? iPod video. Owning an iPod video that year was the shit, right? Oh my God, I can watch a music video on a portable shiny device and just walk around with, right? But according to my mom though, that iPod video was the most dangerous and deadliest thing ever. She's like, hide your iPod. It's $300. I don't want you to get mugged while going to the school. It was reasonable for her to like kind of be hyper nervous about it because just a few weeks before that, she was mugged and shoved to the ground when walking home from her ESL class. I know, the anti-Asian hate crime in 2006 is so vintage, right? But my mom always often said, like, she would be like, oh, if you love something, if you like something, keep it to yourself. Like, don't show it to people because that's what makes it special, right? But at the time, getting mugged was the least of my concern, though. What I thought was dangerous about that iPod was that it has too many Pussycat Dolls songs, and Kelly Clarkson songs, and Paris Hilton songs, or as my 19-year-old self called it, the gay songs, right? I didn't want people to question my sexuality when I get home my iPod. So to remediate it, I'll download songs from Eminem, Akon, U2, just so that I can like gay straight balance a playlist, right? That way, if anyone get a hold of my iPod, they'll look at it, just be like, whoever owned this iPod, you gotta be so ambitious. I can see him karaoke both Ja Rule and Ashanti together, right? Like there was also no way for me to say no to my mom at that time because my mom was diagnosed with terminal intestinal cancer, and everything just felt so insignificant relative to her diagnosis. And it was also during this period that a family member of mine found a photo of me at the New York City Pride Parade, and she thought the right step to do was to show it to the entire family beside my mom's. And the entire family just went into panic modes. Each one of them began to have like constant secret meetings, like discussing how to like handle this, address this. And I wasn't in all those behind closed door meetings, but I imagine they were like saying things like, we should tell mom, like maybe this is just a phase. Like maybe you'll marry a woman. Make him promise mom that he'll marry a woman. He can't say no to his mom who's very sick. Or maybe, like lock him inside a room with a bunch of beautiful women. Maybe he'll turn straight that way. If I'm ever locked into a room with a bunch of beautiful women, like no one will turn straight. It'll be a scene from season 4, American Next Top Model, all right? We were rooting for you, Tiffany. That's my worst impression of Tara Bank. When the doctor told us that my mom had 6 months to live, my mom started preparing for the inevitables. She started teaching my dad how to cook. She started showing my dad which Chinese supermarket is cheaper to shop at in Flushing. And she'll tell my dad that, oh yeah, Ricky like this kind of apples. It's the 4131 apples. And she started like clearing out her drawer, place where she keep all the things that she value. And she, one day she kind of pulled me aside and then she gave me a pair of earrings. And she was like, this is from grandma. I want your future wife to have this. Keep it to a place where you keep all the things that you value, like your iPod video. And I look at the earrings, and I was like, I can't tell her I won't have a wife because I still want those earrings. They're for my mom, right? And one day, after my mom's chemotherapy, she came home, and she was sitting at the lazy boy massage chair. She's peeling that 4131 apples. And my mom liked to do this when she's cutting the apples. Like, after you cut the apple, she put it in a bowl of salt water, so they can keep the apple fresh, like keep it crisp, prevent it from browning, And as she's cutting the apple, she looked up and she looked at me and she said, today at chemotherapy, I saw a lesbian couple for the first time in my life. One of them was also getting chemo, and her partner was with her at the time. I was shocked when my mom told me that, because my mom and I are close, but we are Asian close. Right? Like, we don't talk about sexuality like that, right? So I looked at her and I was like, what do you think about it? And my mom was like, I think I'm very lucky because I have raised 4 children who look after my husband after I'm gone. My job as a wife is complete. Your dad be able to walk on the street in this new country without fear because I trust that all 4 of you will look after him. But when I'm looking at the lesbian couple, it's just 2 of them. I can't imagine how lonely one of them will feel when the other is gone. She seems alone. She seems that no one is going to take care of her. And my mom turned around and looked at me, and she said, is that what you want? Do you want to be alone? Do you want to live a lonely life? Because Mama can't be with you forever. Mama will leave. Mama can't take care of you forever. Mama 陪不了你多久了。At that moment, I looked at her and I thought, did she know? Did she see the Pussycat Dolls songs on my iPod? She opened up a topic for me to talk to her, for me to convince her that she could be wrong. But I looked at her and I see how weak and fragile she is. I was like, is this the right time? The doctor told us my mom has 6 months to live, and she lived past that 6 months. And every day just kind of became a miracle for us. Like, if you ever live with somebody with cancer, you kind of know that you have to live each day like the best that can happen and the worst that can happen at the same time. And in both universes, I couldn't come out to her, right? I kind of just wanted to live like how it used to be before she was diagnosed with cancer. Like, just like that bowl of saltwater 4131 apples. I don't want anything to change. I just want to remain status quo. And I don't want to tell her anything new, like how like my sexuality or how Pluto is no longer a planet, right? I just want to hold her feet and lotion her feet and tell her that, the chemo-induced dryness is just temporarily. So when she asked me if I want to be alone forever, I didn't know what to say, and I switched topic. In 2006, my mom was the one diagnosed with intestinal cancer. I was the one that didn't have to gut to come out to her. During the funeral, a lot of people came up to me and they were like, Ricky, I'm so sorry that your mom had left you when you're still so young. She can't even see you graduate from college. Yeah, but you know what else she can't see? That 10 years later, I graduate from law school and I give that all up to do stand-up comedy. Telling dick joke for $5 a night, And my mom see that, they probably would have killed her faster than cancer. During the pandemic, I kind of started had more time with myself and started clearing out a lot of things that my mom kept and a lot of her belongings. And I started coming across a lot of the things that she kept, like her ESL class notes and some Chinese newspaper cutout of recipe of medicine soup that she used to cook to remediate her chemo pain. She kept them very well, just like how she told me to keep my iPod. And I came across this blue folder, and within it, there's a lot of Chinese translated articles and brochures from LGBTQ organizations. And one of them is a brochure that titled, "My child just came out to me, what should I say?" Apparently she's been doing research about having a gay son when she was alive. And there was another newspaper article cut out. It's an interview of a mother of another lesbian daughter, where my mom highlighted a quote that says, "I may never understand it, but I know she'll be okay, because I'll always be there with her. 我会一直跟她走在一起的." I may never know my mom's intention behind highlighting the quote. I'll take that as she knows I'll always be okay. Thank you.
Wow, what a beautiful story. One more time for Ricky, everybody. It's really lovely. If you want to hear more about that, his solo show coming out to Dead People is just a longer, more wonderful version of that. So check it out next time it comes around. I'm never going to forget what 4131 apples are now. I've got it right up here next to 4011 bananas, 4043 peaches. So, all right, folks, that is our show. So thank you so much for coming out. Let's hear it one more time for everybody here, for Ricky and Mitch and Lauren and Gigi and Bridget, for Lauren up in the tech booth, and Cameron, our house manager / bartender. Everybody here at Frigid, thanks for having us. We're going to be back here. We do this every 2 months on the first Wednesday. So the next show is Wednesday, November 6th, which is the day after the election. So it could be weird or it could be fun. I don't know. We'll find out. So please come back. We'll see you then. All right.